Standing on the veranda of the seaside villa, I tightly held onto my phone, staring at the screen where Dad was flashing. Deep fury churned in my chest. "You just went ahead and did what you wanted, didn't you?" I said, my voice wavering. I heard my father, Daniel, breathing on the other side of the call. "Margaret, I thought you'd understand. Diana needs money. If we don't settle the debt, well, it's natural for family members to support each other," he reasoned. His words made me let out a sarcastic smile. Ah, the old family card. I am Margaret Moore. My parents, who always doted on my younger sister Diana by 2 years, were predictable in their behavior. My earliest recollection is from my 5th birthday, when I was ecstatic about receiving the red bicycle I had dreamt of. However, that joy was short-lived as Diana fancied the bike, and soon it became hers. "Diana wants it, doesn't she? You're the older sister, so let her have it," they said. Despite my protests, but it was my birthday gift, my words were lost. The cycle repeated as I entered elementary school. The pencil case, a gift to celebrate school commencement, caught Diana's eye, and it wasn't long before I had to switch to a different one. "Diana is still young, so she desires what you have," my mother explained. She constantly gave in to Diana's wishes. Extracurricular activities revolved around Diana. When I expressed a wish to join swimming lessons, my parents quickly dismissed it. "We're investing in Diana's piano classes." Besides, Diana would feel lonely. For Diana's pursuits, piano, ballet, painting, money was never an issue. Meanwhile, I was restricted to school clubs. Finished with my homework when I wanted to play outside, they said, "Help Diana study." Our parents attended Diana's school events diligently, yet always claimed we're too busy at work for mine. Even when I won first place in a race during sports day, it went unnoticed because Diana had fallen and cried. During a school open day, I made a speech as class president, but they skipped it for Diana's event. When I was elected class representative in 6th grade, I didn't even bother telling them, knowing the conversation would circle back to Diana. A notable memory from my 3rd year in high school, I worked tirelessly for admission to my first choice university. Their reaction was indifferent. "Oh, that's nice," my mother said dismissively. "I'm more interested in Diana's mock test results." That dinner, supposed to celebrate my achievement, featured Diana's favorite dishes and revolved around her. No one appreciated my effort or joy. For Christmas, Diana received lavish gifts while I got practical items. Travel expenses for my club competitions were denied, as funds were reserved for Diana's piano lessons. "Diana is sensitive, Diana is fragile," they said. By the time I entered university, I completely distanced myself from family ties. Mid this, I met Ken in the windsurfing club. As a freshman and a complete novice, I was at the mercy of the waves. Ken, older and the club captain, stood out. On the first practice day, I was swept repeatedly into the sea, swallowing salt water with burning eyes. Just when I was about to give up, Ken offered his hand. "Everyone starts like this. I fell all day long when I was a freshman too." His words saved me. Until then, kindness amidst failure was a rare experience for me. A memorable episode was during the last day of our training camp. Lone at dusk, battling waves I hadn't managed to stand even once that day. "Margaret, the wind is shifting," Ken shouted from the shore. Suddenly, everything clicked. The wind's direction, the waves' movement, and the board's feel. I found myself standing on the waves. My teammates cheered, but my eyes only found Ken's beaming smile. "Don't tense up on the board," Ken gently advised. "Feel the waves, move with them." His words resonated deeply. No one else had ever shown such care. My parents were always fixated on Diana, indifferent to my ambitions or milestones. "Margaret, you've got talent," Ken said. "Your intuition for reading waves is remarkable." It wasn't only his technical guidance that drew me, but also his warmth and playful expressions. A few months after, we began dating. Upon graduating, Margaret and Ken transformed their love for marine sports into a business around their university years. Despite resistance from those around them, especially Margaret's parents, they remained determined. "How do you plan to survive with such an unstable business?" Margaret's father questioned, while her mother, preoccupied with her younger sister Diana, insisted she help the family. Diana, having dropped out of university and struggled with debt, often burdened her parents. In contrast, Ken always encouraged Margaret's ambitions and was ready to forge this path with her, believing that if it's us, we can make it happen. They tirelessly juggled various jobs to fund their startup. Margaret held 3-part part-time positions while Ken sought family loans. Their humble beginnings were marked by a small office 30 minutes from the nearest station, where all furniture was second-hand. Ken joked, "This is our starting line," and Margaret joined in his laughter. Finding business partners was tougher than anticipated. Many dismissed them as too young and inexperienced. Yet they persisted, attending marine sports events and fostering alliances with athletes, slowly building trust. A pivotal moment came when they met an Australian manufacturer also new to business and eager for U.S. expansion. Their passion seemed to resonate, allowing them to secure an exclusive distribution contract. They celebrated this victory at their office with budget-friendly sparkling wine and canned snacks, dreaming big about the future. Reflecting on this moment, Margaret realized it marked the true beginning of their journey. Years into their venture, they fulfilled their dream of purchasing the vacation home, a place perched on a scenic hill overlooking the ocean that both instantly agreed upon. "This is the one," Ken asserted, and Margaret was in complete accord. Their parents' disapproval about the purchase lingered, primarily because they hadn't accepted Margaret's career choice. Nonetheless, she viewed this as a testament to her and Ken's accomplishments. During their first evening there, they shared a serene moment on the deck under a starry sky. Ken expressed his wish to grow old together here, words that continued to bring warmth to Margaret's heart. But tranquility vanished with a phone call from Margaret's father the morning after she returned from a business trip to Southeast Asia and was visiting their beloved home. "Margaret, I need to talk to you," he said, his tone masking an undercurrent of unease. Little did she know the stark reality ready to unfold. "It's about your vacation home," he started, sending a chill down her spine as he continued. "I've already sold it. The transfer will be next month." Confused and shocked, Margaret struggled to grasp the implication of these words. When she demanded an explanation about this abrupt sale, her father revealed Diana's massive $200,000 debt from a failed investment venture. "What has that got to do with our home?" Margaret fumed as anger surged within her. Her father rationalized, "Margaret, I thought you'd understand. We don't act." The collector's insight into how they bypassed consent emerged with his admission. They forged signatures. The gravity of her parents' betrayal and the loss of what symbolized her and Ken's dream weighed heavily on Margaret's heart. As the realization hit me, I could hear the disbelief in my father's voice. "Margaret, listen. Diana was tricked. It's not her fault," he insisted. "No, this is fraud. You can't sell without permission," I stated coolly, deciding it was time to call the authorities. "The police? This is a family matter. Let's not involve them," my father urged, sounding panicked. "This isn't just about family. It's a crime," I replied firmly, staring at the vacation home Ken and I had saved for, where our dreams had woven together under starlit skies. "Margaret, we're family. We look out for each other," my father pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. I sighed. "Yes, we're family, which is why I'm reporting you and Mom." The call ended, leaving only the soft crash of waves and the salty sea breeze on my flushed cheeks. It pained me to think my parents would stoop so low, their blind loyalty to Diana crossing an unforgivable line. Perhaps I was at fault for not stepping in sooner, but enough was enough. I slid my phone back into my pocket and returned inside the vacation home. An hour later, Ken called with concern in his voice. "Margaret, are you all right?" "I just got off the phone with my father," I replied. Ken revealed he spoke to the potential buyer, a younger university acquaintance, who understood the situation immediately, canceling the sale. Relief washed over me. One issue is resolved. "Thank you, Ken," I exhaled. He also mentioned the police found my parents' forged documents, tightening the knot in my chest. "How could they fall so low, Mom and Dad?" Ken arrived later that day, interrupting his work to check on me. "Are you okay?" Ken asked softly, and his embrace brought comfort at last. Years I had held back spilled over. "Why would they do this? Do they think anything is justified for Diana's sake?" Margaret quieted as Ken gently ran his hand through her hair. "You're not at fault, Margaret. Standing up was the right thing. I'm proud of you." His reassurance enveloped me like a soothing balm. The following day, the police launched an in-depth investigation, questioning my parents on attempted fraud charges. Despite my mother's numerous calls, I couldn't bring myself to answer. A week later, Ken and I watched the sun set over the ocean from the deck of our cherished vacation home. He nostalgically remembered the day we discovered this place, and so did I. We had decided immediately to make it ours, revamping its age with new railings, floorboards, and a kitchen, creating memories together. Occasionally, disputes occurred, but those two felt fond in reflection. "Margaret," Ken whispered, gripping my hand, "whatever comes, we'll face it together." I nodded with resolve, aware my relationship with my parents might never recover, but accepting it as part of our journey. This home signified our choices and love. Meanwhile, the police investigation revealed my parents knowingly pursued the sale of a jointly owned property, meticulously falsifying documents. Their deceit was so extensive, they misled the buyer into believing Ken and I were moving overseas, unable to maintain ownership. The most painful revelation was my mother tarnishing our reputation to cover for Diana, who got involved in a fraudulent investment scheme. Initially starting with $10,000, it spiraled out of control. My mother confessed tearfully to the authorities, showing the depths they reached to protect Diana at my expense. During the investigation, my mother insisted that Diana wasn't to blame, saying she was just fooled and not as clever as Margaret. The officers seemed taken aback by her words. Meanwhile, my emotions were whirlwind. It was hard to process my parents' extreme measures. They had depleted their savings and even sold land to cover Diana's $200,000 debt. When that wasn't enough, they tried selling our cherished vacation home as a last resort. One day, Diana contacted me. "How could you do this, sis? Turning our parents over to the police is heartless." Her refusal to accept responsibility was glaring. I replied calmly, highlighting the crime she'd committed by accessing so much debt that our beloved vacation home had to be sold to cover it. "But we're family," she pleaded. "You need to start being accountable for your actions," I retorted. After hanging up, exhaustion engulfed me entirely. Since childhood, Diana lived recklessly, relying on our parents' endless support while I dedicated myself to my studies and job. I lost track of how many times she fell into debt, beginning with the $3,000 student loan for luxury shopping, which my parents immediately settled. Not long after, her tuition money, totaling $30,000, was misspent on social trips and new clothes. My father had to dip into his savings to cover it. Diana, with her lack of life experience, wasn't chastised. Instead, my parents shielded her actions, repeating that she simply didn't grasp money's value. By her third year, she dropped out of college, getting involved in part-time work at a restaurant. She started dating a customer who led her into a fraudulent investment scheme, resulting in a $38,000 loss. "You wouldn't understand, Margaret, because you're too smart," she accused. Though her relationship ended thanks to my parents' pleading, they again settled her debt, further depleting their retirement savings. Now, duped once more in another scheme, Diana's new $200,000 debt exhausted all their means, leading to the unforgivable decision to sell our vacation home. I argued that they had excessively coddled her, yet my mother countered, saying Diana needed protection. My parents' blind devotion to Diana only facilitated her lack of accountability. Even when I decided to start a business, they opposed it, urging me to join a stable company instead and take responsibility for Diana. But with Ken as my ally, I was walking my own path. Still, the attempt to seize our vacation home showed their unrelenting misunderstanding. Together, Ken and I watched the sunset over the ocean as autumn deepened, aware that our bond was unshakable. In total, the debts eventually reached over $400,000, and despite everything, my parents continued absolving Diana by blaming society. They claimed my fortune should enable me to assist, words now tinged with bitter irony. Ultimately, they ruined Diana by indulging her every whim, and now tried to disrupt our lives too. Perhaps they never accepted our life choices, Ken speculated. He was likely right, evidenced by their thoughtless decision to discard something we treasured. That was their lack of comprehension, not ours. Ken's gentle smile fortified me always as we shared irreplaceable memories at the vacation home. As winter approached, we received the final police report. My parents had been prosecuted, resulting in a suspended sentence. I threw away their apology letters unread. Some things were simply unforgivable. It has been a year since I learned a tough lesson about repeating mistakes. When the fraudulent sale of the vacation home was revealed, it hit my family hard. According to a neighbor who spoke with my mother's friend, my parents are still trying to recover from the financial blow. My father had no choice but to step down from his job, and my mother now manages 3 part-time positions: early morning shifts at a warehouse, packing at a food factory during the day, and working the register at a 24 our supermarket at night. I overheard a woman gossiping by the supermarket checkout where my mother worked, whispering about how the Moores are having a difficult time. My mother, she said, has lost considerable weight. Our family home was sold, and now my parents and Diana live in a modest apartment on the edge of town. All their retirement savings vanished, and they accrued more debt to cover Diana's expenses. Relatives repeatedly asked me, Margaret, can't you assist your parents? My answer was always the same. They need to solve their issues independently. Diana hasn't changed. She's still chasing risky ventures. She encountered a man in a nightclub and is contemplating yet another investment plan, declaring it foolproof and a guaranteed profit. When my parents tried to dissuade her, Diana lashed out, I'm struggling, and you're acting just like Margaret, so unfeeling. Help me! But my parents couldn't afford to anymore, barely keeping up with their monthly debt payments. My father found work as a night security guard, working weekends without rest. My mother, unable to be selective, spends her time scouring sales at supermarkets for discounted items. Neighbors observed her once by the roadside, weeping quietly at night. Diana, frustrated by abandonment, turned her wrath toward me. It's all your fault, sis. Reporting them to the police ruined everything. We could have solved it by selling that stupid vacation home, she accused. One day at the supermarket, I saw my mother. Her once dark hair was white, her back bent. Our eyes met, but she averted her gaze and moved away, her basket laden with soon-to-expire bargains. Reports came that my father collapsed during a night shift, diagnosed with overwork, yet he quickly resumed, aware that missed payments would unleash relentless debt collectors. At year's end, Diana emailed me, Margaret, lend me $50,000. I promise I can turn things around. But she had maxed out all her consumer loans and credit cards. She had no one left to turn to, and I was her last hope. I didn't respond directly. Instead, I provided information to my parents about counseling and debt relief services, knowing that's all I could offer now. Why didn't we see this coming before it got this far? Lamented my mother's friend, echoing in my mind. My parents' unwavering devotion to Diana led to our downfall. I sighed, looking out at the sea. Ken approached, wrapping his arms around me. You're not at fault, he assured me. I nodded, confident in my choices, hard as they were. I've had an idea, Ken said thoughtfully. Why not turn the vacation home into a venue for charity events? He proposed, offering underprivileged children the chance to engage in marine sports. His idea moved me. Having felt isolated by my family, I wanted to reach out to those who shared that loneliness. That's a brilliant notion, I replied. Ken continued, your parents view this place as mere property, but to us it represents dreams. Let's help others share in that dream. Ken had always understood even the deepest parts of my heart. I agree, let's make it happen, and with that resolve, we donned our wetsuits and embraced the waves. In those moments, pure happiness enveloped me. Though my connections with my biological family had frayed, my decisions felt right. As we listened to the ocean's whisper, we looked forward, vowing that this vacation home would be a sanctuary of dreams, now becoming a beacon of hope for others to chase their aspirations.